Hello everyone, I'm so happy to see you again on my channel. Today, I would like to continue sharing with you another chapter of a story full of drama and tears, the life of the single mother Ly Hoai Ca and her husband, the police officer Hùng. As we saw in the previous video, an unexpected tragedy struck. While on duty, Hùng unfortunately fell into the ambush of a ruthless smuggling gang. Alone and outnumbered, he fought in desperation until his strength gave out, collapsing on the deserted dirt road. Blood stained his uniform, his life hanging by a fragile thread. At that very moment, without a helping hand, he might never have crossed back from the edge of death. And then, in the midst of danger, a stranger appeared. She had only been passing by that road, the scent of freshly picked vegetables still clinging to her basket. But when she saw a policeman lying unconscious, she panicked, dropped everything, and rushed to his side, kneeling down to support him. In that chaotic moment, her compassion became the lifeline that pulled Hùng back from death's door. She quickly sought help, found transport, and brought him to the hospital in critical condition. Yet fate had more trials in store. Hùng survived the ordeal, but the severe head injury erased all his memories. His name, his family, his hometown, even the image of his wife Hoai Ca and their little child, all wiped clean, like a blank sheet of paper. In his eyes now remained only confusion and loneliness, like a child lost in an unfamiliar world. Meanwhile, back home, Hoai Ca toiled in the rice fields and tended the grapefruit orchard, weighed down by the burdens of daily life. She cared for her ailing mother, raised her young child, and waited every day for news of her husband. In her heart, she always prayed for Hùng safety, but she had no idea that he was lying far away, lost in amnesia, unable to find his way back to her. From here, the story takes a new turn. Will the stranger, the woman who saved him, continue to accompany Hùng on his journey of recovery? Will the memories of family, love, and duty ever return to him? And when the truth finally comes to light, how will Hoai Ca face the pain of this separation? All of this will be revealed in today's video. I invite you all to watch and experience every emotion, from sorrow to hope, from loss to faith. Don't forget to leave your encouragement and blessings for Hoai Ca and Hùng in the comments, because your love will be the strength they need to carry on through these stormy days. The steady patter of rain fell onto the old eaves, each drop striking like a mournful rhythm, making the small house feel even more desolate. The moss-stained tiles quivered under the cold wind blowing in from the dike. Out in the yard, puddles shimmered with silver light, each heavy raindrop sending ripples across the surface. In the distance, the fields were veiled in misty rain, no longer clear which was rice and which was grass. Only the sound of water rushing through the ditches could be heard. Inside the dim kitchen, the flickering flame from the straw stove cast trembling shadows against the earthen walls, now large, now small, as if recounting the years of hardship mother and daughter had endured together. The pungent smoke curled into Hoai Ca's hair, tangling it like the turmoil in her heart. She sat curled up by the stove, her thin frame wrapped in a faded brown shirt. The heat of the fire flushed her pale cheeks, yet her eyes still betrayed exhaustion. Several sleepless nights had carved dark shadows beneath them, her eyelids heavy. She tried to suppress the dizzy spells, but her frail posture gave her away. From the porch, Mother Ha stepped in, her bent back hunched further against the late-season chill. In her hands was a steaming bowl of herbal medicine, its bitter scent filling the small kitchen. Placing it before her daughter, she spoke softly, a mix of worry and reproach. "Drink this. You've been complaining of dizziness and sleepless nights for days now. If you let this drag on, it won't end well. If you collapse, who will this old mother depend on?" Hoai Ca sat still for a moment, her eyes fixed on the bowl. The steam blurred the porcelain rim, like the haze clouding her uncertain future. Then she nodded slightly, lifting the bowl. The bitterness stung her nose and made her frown, yet she forced each sip down. Her throat burned, her eyes shut tight, and her trembling hand set the bowl back down. She exhaled deeply, as though trying to let go of the burdens in her chest. Mother Ha said nothing more. She quietly placed a plate of boiled eggs, already peeled, in front of her daughter. Hoai Ca picked one up and ate small bites to the sound of the rain outside. A simple breakfast of eggs and sesame salt, yet within it was the boundless love of a mother for her fragile child. After a while, Hoai Ca lifted her gaze to the smoke-darkened ceiling and murmured, "With rain like this, it'll be a long time before it clears. Once it does, you and I should go out to the field, pick some vegetables to sell at the market. Then we can stop by the grapefruit orchard and check the rice paddies." Mother Ha nodded, her eyes still on the misty rain beyond. "Yes, that's true. But I see your health is too weak these days. You can't keep pushing yourself like this. When the harvest comes, maybe we should rent the fields out. Rice is precious, yes, but it's hard work with little profit. If we lease it, at least we'll have some money and less burden." At her words, Hoai Ca lowered her head, her heart knotted with conflict. Those fields were not only their livelihood, but also her father's legacy. Renting them out felt like letting go of part of her family's sweat and memories. Yet reality, and her failing health, pressed her to reconsider. Seeing her daughter's silence, Mother Ha continued with a glimmer of hope. "As for the grapefruit orchard, the branches are heavy with fruit this year. It looks good, but the skins aren't pretty, probably because we couldn't afford enough fertilizer early on. Well, let's wait for Hung to return and decide then. He knows how to manage, he knows which traders will pay fair prices. With him here, our burdens would feel so much lighter." At the mention of her husband, a pang pierced Hoai Ca's heart. Her eyes drifted toward the dark doorway where the rain still fell like a curtain. In that instant, longing overwhelmed her, and she bit her lip to hold back the tears. In her mind appeared the image of Hung, hurrying off in his police uniform, promising to return soon to help the family. Now, those words echoed only faintly in memory. Outside, the rain drummed steadily, each drop echoing the sorrow of mother and daughter. In the small kitchen, the fire still glowed red, keeping them warm through the cold rain, but unable to dispel the heavy worries weighing on their hearts. Meanwhile, at the far end of a remote village, the sky too was breaking into a violent storm. Heavy gray clouds pressed low, thick and suffocating, as though about to crush the humble thatched roofs. Thunder rumbled from distant hills, shaking even the old wooden doors of the village homes. Rain poured down in torrents, big and small drops merging into a white curtain that blanketed the muddy red slope, now even more slippery. The road, usually traveled only by women carrying vegetables or firewood in the early morning, lay deserted, filled only with the sound of falling rain and wind howling through the bamboo thickets. In the midst of this scene, a young girl with a small frame made her way carefully down the slope. On her shoulder was a bamboo basket, soaked through, filled with freshly picked forest greens and a few sweet potatoes dug from the fields. The sudden rain plastered her simple brown tunic against her skin, yet she quickened her steps, hoping to reach home before nightfall. Suddenly, she froze. Through the curtain of rain, her startled eyes caught sight of a man sprawled at the roadside, motionless. Her heart clenched. The basket slipped from her hands, vegetables scattering down the muddy slope. For a moment she stood stunned, then rushed forward. Kneeling beside the man, she trembled as her hand touched his shoulder. His face was deathly pale, lips darkened, his black hair matted with rain, and from his temple trickled a stream of blood, mingling with the water. His body was cold, clothes drenched, smeared with mud. The girl sobbed in panic, shaking him desperately. "Sir, can you hear me? Please wake up, don't scare me like this." But the only answer was the pounding rain, the biting wind, and his motionless body. Her heart raced, breath quickened, and with trembling hands she pressed against his chest. There, faint but steady, his heart still beat. In a frenzy, she leapt up and ran into the rain, her voice hoarse as she cried out, "Someone's hurt. Please come quickly. Help." Her urgent plea echoed down the slope, cutting through the dense rain. Soon, villagers from nearby thatched houses hurried out, shielding themselves with makeshift raincoats and flashlights in hand. Shocked at the sight, they rushed to cover him with a plastic sheet, then lifted the man together, debating how to get him to medical care. An old three-wheeled lamb van sputtered to life, its engine clattering as it carried Hung toward the district hospital through the rain. The girl sat beside him, holding his body steady, her own clothes drenched, hair plastered against her face, but her eyes never left his pale features, silently praying he would survive. At the hospital, under the cold glare of white lights, doctors worked quickly. They placed Hung on a stretcher and wheeled him into the emergency room. Medical tools clattered, orders rang out sharply, and the monitor beeped steadily. The girl stood outside, clutching her torn bamboo basket with muddy vegetables still clinging inside, her heart twisting with fear. Because Hung carried no identification, the nurses and doctors were at a loss. No one knew who he was, where he came from, or who his family might be. At that moment, the village headman who had come along took responsibility. He signed the advance payment papers, promising to stand in his family, simply begging the doctors to save the man's life. The emergency operation dragged on for hours. Outside, the storm raged, wind slamming against the hospital windows. The young girl sat huddled on a bench, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the closed door. Each time footsteps echoed in the corridor, her heart leapt. Finally, the doctor emerged, exhaling in relief. "He's fortunate. Only soft tissue injuries, no severe brain trauma. But his unconscious state will need close monitoring for the next day or two." Hearing this, the girl felt a heavy stone lift from her chest, though her shoulders still trembled, tears mingling with the rain not yet dry on her cheeks. In that moment, the stranger's life seemed entrusted into her care by fate itself, as if she had been given the duty to protect and watch over him, at least until he awoke. On a damp morning after a long night of rain, faint sunlight filtered through the hospital window, casting a pale glow across the ashen face lying motionless on the white bed. After hours of deep coma, Hung stirred. His fingertips trembled, his hand slowly clenched. His heavy eyelids quivered, as though wrestling with an endless dream. The young girl, who had kept vigil by his bedside for nights without rest, immediately noticed the movement. Her heart pounded, her eyes lit up, and she cried out, "Doctor, he's waking up." Moments later, the door swung open and doctors and nurses hurried in. They leaned down, checked his heartbeat, his breathing, then gently asked, "Can you hear me? What is your name? Do you remember how old you are?" Hung blinked a few times, struggling to open his clouded eyes. Shapes flickered into focus, stark white walls, harsh neon lights, the sharp smell of antiseptic, the steady beeping of machines. Everything was alien, cold, as if he had awakened in another world. He opened his mouth, his throat parched, producing only a hoarse whisper. Then, with a gaze filled with confusion, he weakly shook his head. Who am I? Where am I?" The room fell silent. The girl froze, her chest tightening. The doctor calmly reassured him. "You've suffered a head injury. Your memory is unstable right now. This is temporary amnesia. Your memories may return gradually. For now, you must rest while we continue monitoring." Hung fell quiet, his dazed eyes wandering across the unfamiliar room. The faces before him, doctor, nurse, the young girl, were all strangers. He searched desperately within his mind for a name, a face, a memory, but all he found was a terrifying blank void. He whispered, trembling as though speaking to himself. "Why can't I remember anything? Who was I before this?" The girl at his side clenched her hands, her eyes red. Though she had met him only in the darkest of circumstances, hearing those words made her heart ache. Somehow she knew, from this moment on, this stranger's life was bound to hers by duty and compassion she could not abandon. Since no identity could be confirmed, no one knew who Hung really was, where he came from, or if loved ones waited somewhere for him. He had no papers, no phone, nothing at all, as though he had fallen from another world. The village headman, from the place where Hung was found, stepped forward to guarantee his care. Despite his old age and burdens of village affairs, he advanced hospital fees, visited often with fruit or milk, and asked the girl to look after him. Yet he could not remain by the bedside each day. Thus, the responsibility seemed to fall to the young girl, the first to find him on that stormy night, the one who had carried him to safety. From then on, she treated him almost like family. Each morning, after helping her elderly mother, she rushed to the hospital with warm food wrapped neatly. By evening, after finishing the farm work, she returned again, sitting for hours by his bed, making sure the stranger still breathed, that his heart still beat. She cooked porridge with freshly milled rice, added tender greens from her garden, simple but full of warmth. She patiently fed him spoon by spoon, wiping away each drop that spilled from his lips. Her calloused hands, once hardened by farm labor, now grew gentle as she cleaned his wounds, replaced bandages, and washed away the dried traces of blood. When Hung first tried to sit up after days of lying still, she was the one to slip her arm behind his back, guiding his every slow movement, whispering encouragement. "Just a little more, you'll get stronger soon." At first, Hung was hesitant, embarrassed. Deep inside, he felt uneasy being a burden on a girl who owed him nothing. Many times, he tried to refuse her care, stubbornly attempting tasks himself. But his weak body betrayed him, and in the end he sat silently, yielding to her patience. Day by day, her quiet devotion melted his hesitation. His eyes softened from confusion to gratitude, from distance to closeness. He spoke little, but every glance, every breath carried unspoken thanks. In a heart emptied of memory, one truth remained clear. Without her, he would never have had the chance to sit here, breathing fragile breaths, watching the morning sunlight pour gently through the hospital window. The girl knew nothing of his past, and Hung remembered nothing of himself. Yet both understood one thing: his fragile grasp on life was tied to her sincerity. A fateful encounter, born from a storm on the village slope, had now opened a path neither of them could foresee. Meanwhile, back in their village, the sky shifted restlessly between sun and rain, as unpredictable as a troubled heart. After a morning downpour, the ground slowly dried, and the wind carried with it the earthy scent of the fields. Hoai Ca and Mother Ha took the chance to carry baskets of vegetables to the market. The village market was always lively in the morning. Voices called out, bargaining echoed, chickens clucked, pigs squealed, and the sharp cries of vendors pierced through the air. Hoai Ca set down her bundles of fresh, dew-kissed greens and began her familiar call. Her voice, though tinged with fatigue, rang clearly and blended into the noisy rhythm of market life. Familiar customers soon gathered, some buying a few bundles, others a full basket. Within moments, half of her load was gone. An old woman, a familiar customer, held her hand kindly as she paid. "Your vegetables are always fresh and sweet. Take care of yourself, child. Don't carry everything alone, ask for help when you need it." Hearing those words, Hoai Ca could only smile faintly, though her heart ached. By midday, most of their vegetables were sold, and mother and daughter packed up to return home. On the way back, Hoai Ca lifted her gaze to the vast rice fields, a strange unease stirring in her chest. That noon, after a quick meal of rice and braised fish, they went back to the fields. Their 2,000 square meter paddy now stood heavy with grain, green and gold swaying in the wind. In just 2 weeks, the harvest would come. Standing at the edge of the field, watching the waves of rippling rice, Hoai Ca felt both joy and worry. Joy for the fruits of her labor, worry that her weakening health might not withstand the harvest. Mother Ha leaned on her cane, eyes scanning the wide expanse, and sighed. "After this season, we need to reconsider. There's too much land and you're getting weaker. We can't keep pushing ourselves like this. Maybe we should rent out some of the paddies. It would ease our burden and still give us some income." Hoai Ca lowered her head, her hand twisting the hem of her shirt. She knew her mother was right, but in her heart lingered regret. The fields were not just their livelihood, but also her late father's legacy. To give them up felt like letting go of his memory. By afternoon, they were home again. In the courtyard, herbs and medicinal plants they had picked and washed were neatly arranged on an old mat. The soft light of sunset spread across the yard, the earthy scent of herbs mingling with the smell of straw, painting a scene rich in rustic simplicity. Mother and daughter worked side by side, sorting and planning, counting every bit of savings for the days to come. Though life was hard and meager, there was still the quiet peace of village life. The crow of roosters, the laughter of children playing in the alley, and the barking of dogs at the village gate seemed to lighten the heavy burdens. Meanwhile, in a faraway, unfamiliar place, Hung faced a starkly different reality. He sat silently on a white hospital bed, his empty gaze fixed on the narrow window. Outside, tree branches swayed in the summer breeze, cicadas sang ceaselessly, yet within him stretched only a vast emptiness. He could not remember who he was, where he came from, or if anyone still waited for him. Only one truth remained clear deep in that haze of forgetfulness. He felt deep gratitude for the young girl who visited daily. She changed his bandages, fed him porridge, supported him as he learned to sit. Through her patience and tenderness, she gave him the sense that he was not entirely lost in this world. In the frightening void of amnesia, she was the fragile thread keeping him anchored, the warmth that let him believe he still had a place to belong, even if only for now. On one side, Hoai Ca labored in the fields, at the market, in her small kitchen, her fragile shoulders carrying the weight of the family. On the other, Hung sat in silence at the hospital, his heart empty but filled with quiet gratitude for the girl who had saved him. Two fates, two lives, running parallel like opposite fragments, waiting for the day destiny would bind them together again. On one side was Hoai Ca, her small frame wrapped in the familiar brown ona, quietly holding a heavy bundle of rice stalks. Across the vast field, golden grains bent low in the afternoon breeze, the waves of rice swaying like the sea. She gazed far into the horizon where white clouds drifted slowly. In her eyes shimmered both a simple hope for a bountiful harvest and an unshakable worry, her declining health, the endless farm work, and the absence of her beloved husband, who had not once sent word back home. Her face bore the marks of weariness and sorrow, Yet deep in her eyes flickered the resilience of a woman who endures every day for the sake of her family. On the other side, in an unfamiliar place, Hùng sat silently on a hospital bed. The sterile room glowed under pale yellow light, filled with the cold scent of disinfectant. In front of him was a steaming bowl of porridge, freshly brought by the stranger girl who had saved him. She gently placed the bowl on the table, pulled a chair closer, her eyes brimming with care. Hùng stared at the porridge, the rising steam blurring like his tangled memories. In his eyes flickered deep gratitude. He knew that without her helping hands, he might not be here breathing and seeing the light of a new day. Two lives, two fates, existing in parallel, unaware of each other. One side, Hoai Ca still waits and shoulders the burdens of the sun-scorched fields. The other, Hùng drifts in the void of forgetfulness, leaning on the patient care of a stranger. Will Hung's memory gradually return, helping him realize he is a husband, a father, and the pillar of a family waiting back home? And when the truth comes to light, how will Hoai Ca face it, knowing the husband she longs for is now being tenderly cared for by another woman? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out the answers, and don't forget to leave your blessings for Hoai Ca and Hung's family in the comments below.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình hiện tại thì vẫn đang trong quá trình edit và chỉnh sửa video và chưa có hoàn thành, và mình vẫn đang cố gắng hoàn thành video sớm nhất có thể để có thể đưa đến cho mọi người. Và mình hy vọng rằng những video hôm nay sẽ góp phần nào đấy đưa thêm diễn biến câu chuyện đến cho mọi người, để mọi người có thể cảm nhận được thêm nữa về diễn biến câu chuyện cũng như là những tình tiết xoay quanh mẹ đơn thân Ly Hoai Ca và cũng như là cảnh sát Hùng. Mọi người thân mến, thì qua video vừa rồi thì mọi người cũng đã biết là hiện tại thì Hùng do là bị cái đám buôn lậu tấn công nên anh đang bị thương nặng và ở bệnh viện, và hiện tại do bị tấn công vào đầu nên là nó đang ảnh hưởng đến một phần ký ức cũng như là trí nhớ của Hùng, và hiện tại anh đang mất trí nhớ. Và cũng may mắn là có một cô gái đã cứu và hiện tại đang chăm sóc cho Hùng. Vậy liệu diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào thì mình mời mọi người đón xem vào ngày mai nhé.